Welcome to Faith in 5, a weekly video devotional designed to discuss practical spiritual concepts in 5 minutes or less. I'm your host, Mark Vandella. I've had a lot of great opportunities to do some corporate training. Most of the time it's all along the lines of leadership and some sort of elements of leadership, and a lot of times it's lecture and case studies and the like, but I always like to include some sort of activity. And when I do, almost every one of my activities has a set of rules that are rather vague, or I will intentionally make them not the same for each team, right? One team might ask me a question, and I'll mix it up a little bit. And what that does when everybody comes back together is it highlights a couple of things when it comes to communication, highlights some things about how we address different situations based on our behavior styles, based on our roles and our job descriptions. But the other thing that it does is it highlights that some of us play by different rules. Some of us have different rules. It opens up great conversations about gender and race and different, the hierarchy things that workplace creates. And it identifies that there is a set of rules that we play by. But when I change them or I make them a little different, it kind of upsets the apple cart. And the nice thing about that is it identifies the very rules that they normally play by, and then we're able to discuss those and talk about them. Unfortunately, when it comes to our relationships at home, like our home life, our family, our kids, our spouses, the rules aren't as clear. We haven't necessarily established a hierarchy or a job description, and oftentimes we throw all the rules out the window when we have disagreements and we have fights at home. And so today, my goal in this Us series is to provide just really concrete things that you could do at home to make your relationships just a little bit better. There's a verse in the Bible in Ephesians 4:25 through 27 says this. It says, "Therefore, each of you must not speak falsehood. Speak truthfully to one another." It says that for you are part of one body. Another version even says that what we do to ourselves, we do to the other person. And so in our home life, with our families and our spouses, if we can start with that perspective when we approach the other person with a disagreement, a fight, whatever it happens to be, punishment, that we can say, hold on a second, within this home, within this house, whatever I do has an impact on me as well. And that might cause us to just approach it a little bit differently. Then that verse goes on to say, "In your anger, do not sin." It says that while you are still angry, don't go to bed. And then it finishes with, "Don't give the devil a foothold." And see, the things, if I can unpack that just a touch, it says basically don't let anger overtake you. In these emotional, most of us don't make decisions in the height of emotions when it comes to making purchases, when it comes to quitting a job or accepting a job. We really do take the time to think these things through. But at home, when emotions run hot, we usually give in to that emotion. We go with the anger. And so it warns us, don't make these decisions in the height of that anger. And it says, don't go to bed angry. And I think the reality for most of us is not that we're going to solve all of our problems in one evening, right? For me, at 3 a.m., nothing good is happening at 3 a.m. in a conversation. I'm pretty tired and I'm grumpy, and I may just say sorry because, or I might get more upset and angry. That's not exactly what this is saying. What it's saying basically is if you communicate, when you're communicating, when you're fighting, when you're arguing, be willing to say, "I'm sorry." Be willing to stifle that flame of anger just a bit and be willing to communicate to the other person, you know what, no matter what our disagreements are, I'll still be here in the morning. And then lastly, what happens when we respond in anger and we let our emotions drive, it kind of creates a wedge. It cracks the door just a little bit. And the more we do that, the more we let that happen, the more we let our anger take control and our emotions run hot, the more potential there is for lasting damage. And so in your relationships, what I would encourage is to go back to the example of what are the rules, right? In most of our relationships, we don't have fighting fair rules or rules of engagement. So this week, I encourage you to go back to your family and actually set some boundaries. Some ideas would be maybe stop using always and never. Those usually lead to conversations about frequency rather than the actual problem. Speak in feelings in terms of this is how I feel, not you did this or you always do that. Consider being willing to push pause and give room for some space so that anger can tone down a touch. And be willing to put yourself in the other person's shoes with that perspective, like Ephesians says, what you do to yourself, you do to the other people, or what you do to the other people, you do to yourself. This week, take the time, be intentional to create some fair boundaries and rules of engagement when it comes to disagreements in your family and with your spouse. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to follow us each week, click here to subscribe. And if you want to take it a little bit further, click here for discussion materials.